Good evening. Welcome to the November 25th, 2019 Troy City Council meeting. This evening we are pleased to have Councilman Pennington lead us in the invocation, so please rise and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance after.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and we thank you for the chance to work in this wonderful city that we have. We pray that you guide us and keep us as good stewards of the budget and of the word. And we pray that you keep the fire department and the police officers that serve our city safe, protect them and protect their families and protect all the residents and keep them safe and healthy. In Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The November 25th, 2019 Troy City Council meeting is now called to order. The roll call, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Abraham.
Here.
Councilmember Brooks.
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Here.
Councilmember Pennington.
Here.
All present. First up on the agenda is certificates of recognition and special presentations. We have some really good ones tonight. First up is C1, legislative update, and I see Senator Mallory McMorrow has joined us and she'll be providing the update. Senator, please come forward.
Made it right in time. Mr. Mayor, very exciting to say that. Members of council, and for everybody new, welcome. And for everybody who's back, congratulations on campaigns well run. And I'm really excited to be here. Mr. Mayor, you had reached out and asked us to share an update on the budget. So we passed a budget in the state. We avoided a government shutdown. But there is about $1 billion that's still left unallocated in a supplemental budget. That has been the cause of a lot of frustration. I'll be honest, as a new legislator, this has been a really, really frustrating budget season. My hope coming in was that both sides of the aisle would negotiate on the new revenue that I think we need for many of the services we provide. But unfortunately, we have deadlocked. Now, that being said, many of the programs are ready to be restored in a supplemental budget. Both chambers offered up a supplemental budget, and actually Speaker Chatfield and the governor had come to an agreement on a supplemental budget. We were ready to go. We were ready to sign it. Majority Leader Shirkey walked out on it. So that's where we're at right now. We are encouraging all members on both sides of the aisle to bring everybody back to the table. I think I would love for all of us to take this year and move on to the next year. It's Thanksgiving and we're still working on the budget, which is not where we wanted to be. So I continue to encourage both my side of the aisle and the majority leader to come back. We've messaged kind of across the board to tone down the rhetoric on both sides. I think this got really, really ugly this year. And to move forward together. I think that what we saw in 2018, we are closer in parity, and it is our first year in divided government. I think voters sent a message in 2018 that we do want compromise and we want more of a balance, and that's my hope moving forward. So I would ask that if anybody is concerned or you are hearing concerns about what is missing in the supplemental, to contact the majority leader's office and ask him to come back to the table, and so we can sign it and move on to some policy things, because that's another thing that I'm hearing from residents is that all of the amount of time that the budget has taken is taking away from some of the very, very important and frankly bipartisan policy issues that we want to be working on in committee. So that's where we are at there. A couple of other things you may have seen some news. There was a press conference held last week at Beaumont in Royal Oak, where it was announced that there was a new bill introduced to amend the Municipal Partnership Act, which would allow multiple counties to come together to develop a new public transit plan. What's different about this bill is that it would allow for multiple counties to develop this plan with the option for Macomb County, which has opted not to be included in this round, to opt in at a later date, which is slightly different than what we have from the RTA. And it would also do a couple of other things. One thing that I think is really important is that it would allow for all of the funding which would be levied for any kind of a transit plan to be exclusively used for that transit plan. That's something that I hear very often from residents, is that I want to know where my money is going, and when it's allocated to something, I want to know that that is where it is going. So one thing I want to be clear about that It's a bipartisan effort. We do not have a transit plan in place. This is just a very process-oriented bill that would allow the conversations to start happening. So that is in the House right now. Hopefully it moves through the House, comes over to the Senate, and we can get that process started, which should be really exciting. A couple of other things, the lead and copper rule. So this is something that has impacted multiple municipalities that I represent throughout Oakland County. During the previous administration, the Snyder administration, implemented the lead and copper rule, which is the most aggressive law in the entire country to both find and remove lead service lines. We've learned a lot over the past few years in the wake of the Flint water crisis. So we now have more stringent testing that pulls from both the first and the fifth pint of water that you would pull from your water. And what we're seeing now is we are seeing elevated levels of lead. And what we know is there's no level of lead at all that is safe for human consumption. So this testing allows us to really hone in on the source of that contamination. Is it a lead service line? Is it lead soldering? And actually, a lot of people don't know that up until 2014, lead could be used in the fixtures in your home. So that's one of the things that we're helping all of our municipalities hone in on, is where is the source of this contamination. The testing will be ongoing every 6 months, and we will learn more. But if anybody has any questions, they can feel free to contact our office, and we can refer people to resources there. The last thing that I want to highlight is I have a package of bills around electric vehicle charging infrastructure that's bipartisan. We have 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats on the package. The Oakland County Commission passed a unanimous resolution in support of this legislation, which would expand our state's electric vehicle charging infrastructure and position us to be the first fully networked state in the country. What I think is exciting about this is it's a lot around planning and supporting private industry to put a plan in place that actually makes sense and encourages adoption of vehicles, especially for those in multifamily dwellings. We hear a lot that those who live in apartment buildings who might want to try out an electric vehicle, they can't install a charger themselves. So that's a piece of this. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Thank you, Senator, for coming here. Just to clarify, the lead detections, none of that was in Troy, correct? That was another.
Yeah, so we've seen so far, and again, the testing is ongoing and will be ongoing, but Birmingham tested at elevated levels, Royal Oak, White Lake, Huntington Woods, Oak Park. I anticipate, and Eagle has said this as well, that as the testing continues, we will see more alerts. But as that rolls out, I want to make one thing very, very clear, is that the source of our water in this area has not changed. We are still using the Great Lakes Water Authority. The source of the water is clean, is tested, is very safe. But it is finding those sources as water travels to people's homes where it may be contaminated. So Troy was not on the list, but testing is still ongoing.
Just as a quick follow-up, it's my understanding Troy's levels have actually gone down parts per billion compared to the studies done in 2013 or 2014. The most recent test in Troy, for those who live in Troy, is that we're lower than we were even before, which is very, very good. So
absolutely,
no cause for fear in Troy.
Yeah, no, and we've had actually at recent council meetings, we've had a lot of people reach out and say, oh, I've got a family member who lives in Royal Oak or somebody who lives in Birmingham that I know. Can you refer me to resources? So we're happy to do that as well, because we know not everybody has their entire family who lives in Troy.
Any other questions for Senator McMorrow? Councilman Pennington.
Senator, just got a quick, thank you again for coming. Just got a quick question. I don't follow the state budget as much as I follow, local and federal, but what are the major sticking points that between the two sides that they were, just a major, why would they walk out on?
So the major sticking point is it's around process. So we saw the governor execute some fairly aggressive line item vetoes in her budget, and she also utilized the administrative board to allow her to move funding within budgets. So within K-12, for example, she could shift things between line items. It's something that has been on the books. It's something that Governor Engler used in the past. It has been upheld constitutionally from a challenge in the past, but the majority party, particularly the majority leader, wants it in statute that she is no longer allowed to use that move effectively. What the governor has said is she's happy to sign boilerplate language, have a press conference, and my understanding is that the agreement that she had with the Speaker of the House would have put effectively a financial penalty if her office were to use that again. But her stance is kind of very firm that she does not feel it's her right, frankly, to eliminate the authority of the office for future governors, Republican or Democrat. So that's kind of the sticking point right now. And I think what's crucially important is that as we move further and further in the year, the ramifications are very real. So, I think it's kind of a power struggle battle, which has been very, very frustrating for me as a new member. So I think that there are ways to do this where we can all move forward, but that is the sticking point.
Thank you.
I just had a quick question. So how are residents notified if their water has elevated lead levels?
Certainly. So if there is a municipality that has tested, and again, Troy is not one of those municipalities, I want to make very clear, but if there is a city that receives notice from the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy that they have elevated lead levels, they have 4 business days to notify the public. So there's some guidance language around what the testing means, how it goes out, but it is then on the municipality to send out notice to every resident of the municipality, not just those who were impacted. So some of those details might say how many homes were tested, how many homes each city believes might have a lead service line. And one of the aspects of this law is that every municipality around the entire state has to do a complete inventory of where lead service leads are by the end of the year. So we will know where they all are across the state.
Councilmember Hoderick?
I believe our testing is on our website, correct? On the City of Troy website, the results?
Yes.
Under, I know I've looked
Public
at
Works.
it, but under Public Works.
And there's a water and sewer division.
So if folks are interested in looking at the detail of how our testing, what the status and the timing is, it is available and very, open for view on the city website if you're so inclined to take a look.
Yeah, and likewise, the results from the entire state are available on the Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy, DEGL, their website as well. So you can view and search, and it updates it as they roll in. So everything is completely public, and we want to make sure that everybody feels informed by this new law, not scared by it.
Just as a follow-up, go ahead, Councilmember.
Oh, no, follow-up.
Just to follow up to that, City Manager Miller, it's my understanding that the reason Troy's levels have gone down is because of the increase, that there's been additional infrastructure put in that is lessening the likelihood of lead in the water, correct?
Yes, and historically have been active in eliminating lead service lines, and we have not had lead service lines in the city for a couple decades.
Okay. Councilmember Hoderick?
Point. Regarding the transit,
Yes.
will that help set a stage that, we have disparity in Oakland County, for example. We're an opt-in city. Cities more south in the county are, all about, for the most part, opting in and being a part of something. But when you head north, folks aren't thinking that they're necessarily going to benefit, although I would argue economically the whole region benefits from regional transit. Will that allow more creative discussions about how a transit plan could be of benefit even as we go north? Or was this just a process piece on the legislation? I did glance at this, but as you're standing before me, it's a process piece to allow for that discussion, essentially?
Absolutely. It is the first step to allow a conversation between Oakland County, Wayne County, and Washtenaw County to start taking place. And one of the things that was discussed at the press conference is there's a lot to learn from the previous transit proposals, and I think many residents didn't see the value, particularly as you went further north in Oakland County. So some aspects of the legislation allow for a differentiation between the county as a whole and a service area. So my understanding reading it and reading through it is that you'd be able to levy different fees based on the service area. So say, for example, Outer Oakland County did not feel like it was of value to them. That's something that we as a county would, through this legislation, have more of an authority to have that conversation and put a more nuanced and thoughtful plan together. I think that was one of the main critiques of previous plans, is it was kind of all or nothing. It's either everybody's in or everybody's out.
And just a follow-up, or as a comment and feedback, as you're having dialogue on both sides of the aisle. I have taken advantage of our fast bus on numerous occasions, partly to watch the usage as I want to see for myself. And we just took it to the airport Friday. My husband and I picked it up at Somerset and took it. And yes, it does take a little bit longer right now, but you can see, I'm seeing passenger levels going up, people who bike to the bus stop and then put the bike on the front and come back off, people helping one another on and off. There is usage, an increase, and I can say that because I've ridden it. It has never been empty when I've been on it. and it fills up as you head down Woodward. So if we can get smart about this and have dependable, timely service, there's people in need you can see of being able to have this movement, and life is a lot easier when if you go to the airport and you're not having to park, and I just really encourage an openness on the dialogue is my feedback to you on the budget too. And yes, what I'm hearing in our community is we just went through a campaign. Compromise is not a bad word, and people are starving for logical discussion. So, speaking for myself here from the table with you in front of me, yes, that if I could do a resolution that says please dialogue and compromise.
Yeah. And I think something that was really encouraging is the House bill was introduced by Rep. Shepard, who is a Republican, and there's been a lot of conversation, particularly in Southeast Michigan. As we talk about road funding, the solution is not always building more lanes. We have a lot of wear and tear on our roads in Southeast Michigan, and we just did a series through our office of senior listening town halls in every city throughout my district, and at every single one, transit was an issue that seniors wanted, to be able to continue to be connected to the community, to not just want to stay at home and wait until people come to them. It's a real connection thing, and I think exactly to your point, it has to be smarter, no pun intended, but we've learned a lot over the past few years, and this would allow for much more community collaboration.
Yeah, it's good to see.
Any other questions, comments? Are you still accepting submissions for your, I saw it on the
I am, yeah.
Right.
Thank you for reminding me. So we launched in our office, we're doing our Student Shadow program. Applications are now open. They can be downloaded on our website, senatormcmorrow.com, which is open to any high school or college student who is a resident of the 13th district. So even if you go to Michigan State or U of M, but it's a young person who resides here and comes back on break, you're eligible. We're going to have one person out a month to Lansing to shadow me, but we're going to ask them to record a small piece of digital content to answer a question that they're curious about. So anything about the job, anything about the Capitol, anything about a specific bill, in whatever format they want. Podcast, video, Instagram story, TikTok. I'm not really sure how to use that, but I know that that's a thing now. And we're really, really excited about the program. We're going to kick it off in January 2020, and then we will share out all of the content through all of our social channels to help build recognition for these young people as well. So that's open, and thank you for the reminder.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next on the agenda is C2. I'm very excited about this. It's the Citizens Academy graduation presentation. You see all these smiling faces in the front couple rows. It's a big evening for them. I'd like to call forward Drew Benson, the assistant to the city manager, and Stephanie Fleischer, the marketing coordinator, to the podium to start this ceremony. One of our strategies this year was to reinstate I may be stepping on some of your lines, but to reinstate the Citizens Academy. And we did with great success, as I understand. And I believe that as soon as you opened the application process, it almost filled up very quickly, right? So.
Absolutely. Mayor Baker and members of City Council, you may remember a few months ago, Stephanie and myself were standing up here to tell you that we're getting this program rolling. This was a city strategy in 2018. It took a while to get rolling, and yeah, when we opened up applications, we met the threshold within a week, 2 weeks. And we've received even more interest in continuing to participate. So it was a long process, and we're excited to be here.
So the Citizens Academy program, as you know, it serves to educate and encourage future civic engagement and partnership, and I really hope that this session has done that. The Citizens Academy program, it runs 8 weeks long, and each session is 3 hours. So it's definitely a considerable time commitment to all of our participants, and we did go over quite a few sessions. We have a lot of active learners, which is, it was just great. Like, we had a lot of fun.
And so one of the things that we wanted to make sure when putting this program together is that we were really measuring how impactful is this program when it comes to civic participation and education. And so there was a pre-survey and a post-survey, and we found on average between the 19 categories that these participants went through, their understanding improved from an average of about 5.3 to an average of 8.7. That's a pretty significant increase across the board. Also, they on average 8.84 out of 10 would like to participate more in city activities, whether that be boards and committees or really just getting more involved in the community. And 100% recommended it to more people to participate. And really those are the key factors that we thought were really special. So tonight is about recognizing the 19 people who went through this program, and turn it over to you, Mayor Baker, and get this rolling.
Sure thing. And I will say, if 100% would recommend it to somebody else, that's definitely a testament to city staff and all of the department heads and everybody who participated in providing this academy, because if you didn't do a good job, they wouldn't recommend it to somebody else. So thank you for what you folks did as well. So I'm going to come down and present these certificates. So it's my understanding that I will call each one of you up, present the certificate. Is Cindy here? Cindy was here. Oh, she's right there. She's going to take a picture, and then you're going to line up on this side, and then we'll do a group picture when everyone's up here. So this really is wonderful and exciting, and I was thinking about, they talked a little bit about the engagement of the citizens, and I consider you new ambassadors of our city. I mean, you now know things that probably some of us don't know about the individual departments, so we hope that you get out and talk to your friends and neighbors and where you work, where you live, and share the good things about the city, because people need to know the information that you now have in your heads. So I hope you continue to do that, and since you're the inaugural class of this new reinvented Citizens Academy, you should be congratulated, and we're very thankful. So I will start with the first one. That's Vital Ann. Jack Bronca. Oh, this is a fun one. Dr. Teresa Brooks. Oh, where'd she go? She's over here. Larry Casey. Suzanne Forbes Dicker. I know Suzanne, so. Connie Danelko. Warren Gould. I should have done Patricia Gould first. But Patricia Gould. Raymond Heald. Dale Inman. James Couture. Okay. Rosemary Kornacki. Anthony Porta. Now I have some info. We'll just scoot up. Alexander Ruchinski. Ellen Schmidt. Lisa Zheng. Todd Zygmuntowicz. He's tall, so he'll block everybody. But I'm not, all right. Everybody's fine. And Marla Wills. Let's give one more big round of applause for our inaugural. I did mean what I say. I think of you all as ambassadors now, so please go out into the community and do good work on our behalf and share. Community engagement is very important to this community, and this is a great reinvigorated step to get out there and to share what's going on in city government and to guide people in the right direction, because I think that's a big part of what you do as well. So we need to do a group picture. So how do you want to do it? Move over to this side? So I'll move over to this side.
Thanks for doing it. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
Ethan, you'll have to take a knee.
That was good.
Poke your heads through.
Maybe someone can take a knee in front.
What? Ethan.
You still have in the back. You still have.
Larry, get in there. Get in there, Johnny.
There you go. Right there. Oh. Sorry. Nope. Right.
Cindy's should take a knee.
You can move your hand, Stephanie, too. Yeah, right there. Sorry.
That is so cool. The Police Citizens Academy was so awesome.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I know you did it. Yeah. You did it too? The Citizens Academy?
I did the police
Yeah, I did the police.
The police one.
Oh, yeah.
And then when I worked here, I worked on
It is.
I wanted to make sure you stayed with us.
Sure. Just tilt it towards you. Yeah.
I would just like to give a shout out to Drew and Stephanie for the wonderful job they did. They took great care of us during that 8 weeks, and it was just a lot of fun to work with them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll give them a minute to shuffle out. You'd think as graduates they'd stay for the whole meeting, but...
Oh, there's a couple.
A couple of you are. Extra credit. You get extra credit. Oh, you're here. Good thing. All right. This next one, C3, is also a good one. Our library director, Kathy Russ, was named the 2019 Michigan Library Association's 2019 Librarian of the Year. So I'd like to have Kathy join me at the podium. Made it myself. No. It is my absolute honor and privilege, Kathy, to present this to you officially here at Troy City Hall. The Librarian of the Year is obviously a huge deal, and we in the City of Troy and City Council, we thank you for all that you do for the community. We know that you give your blood, sweat, and tears to our public library, and you've gone through some interesting times over the past, I think, 12 years you've been here.
12 and a half.
12 and a half? Who's counting?
Who's counting?
Yeah. But and again, it's my honor to stand up here with you, to hand this award to you officially in our chambers, and to say thank you, Kathy. You definitely are the Librarian of the Year in Troy, but also in the state of Michigan. So congratulations, and give you a handshake. I'm going to give you a hug, too. I was going to say it.
Yes, all the council.
Come down because we all support you, Kathy. So. I know you've got some of your friends of the library out there, and we certainly we could do a picture with them too if you wanted to. Sure. Yeah, or not. All right, you should be holding this. I don't know why I still am.
It's a cool. Here, scoot away from the podium. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Kathy, if you'd just like to say a couple words. Please.
Oh, goodness. Oh, my goodness. Well, I won't give the speech that I had to give at the Michigan Library Association because you're a different crowd, but what's been coming to me over the last month is how grateful I am. My family moved to Troy in 1979, and we had moved around a lot when I was a kid. And so by the time we got to Troy, I had seen my share of libraries. And I walked into the Troy Library, and I thought it was the best library I'd ever seen in my whole life. And I think I was 9. But it was the best library I'd ever seen in my whole life. And I still think that. It is such a wonderful place. But now, I've lived it. I got my first library job at the Troy Public Library, worked there for several years, then went away and worked at other places, and then got to come back as the director in 2007. And it has been just my honor to be the director of the Troy Public Library. I have worked
and continue to work with so many wonderful people who allow me to do whatever it was I did that got me this award. The Friends of the Library who are here, you're a great cheering section. You support me. My library staff, where I would be absolutely nowhere without them. They're the best staff in the state of Michigan, if not in the country, if not in the world. They go the extra 10 miles to make sure that they give the best customer service, and I just am so grateful to them. I have the best bosses. Mr. Miller, Mr. Bruner, John Lamorato hired me, and I'm just grateful for that opportunity that they gave me. I have wonderful friends who are watching at home. Hi. And I mean, what don't I have? I'm so grateful. So thank you all for being a part of this, for City Council for supporting me through thick and thin and up and down and everything, and just for allowing me to do my thing, and for the Troy Library for helping me get where I am today. And thanks to all of you for putting up with this long, rambling, crying speech. But I have to. So thank you, everybody.
That concludes certificates of recognition and special presentations. Next on the agenda are D carryover items, which there are none. So we move on to public hearings. E1 is the Community Development Block Grant CDBG 2020 funds, and it will be introduced by Cindy Stewart, our Community Affairs Director. Cindy?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's my pleasure again this year to introduce the Community Development Block Grant public hearing for our 2020 funds. Oakland County has advised us that we have $178,147 as our planning estimate. And we would like to recommend to continue the retrofit at Firefighters Park, which will remove architectural barriers. People came to us 2 years ago and wanted to go see their grandkids or their children or their husbands play soccer at Firefighters, and they couldn't get there if they're in a wheelchair or have a walker. So this project is going to take more than 1 year of money, so we're going to continue it on this year. And then, as the county tells us, we can only use 30% of our funding for the yard services that we do for low-income seniors and persons with disabilities. So we will do the $53,444 for our yard services. And currently, we are serving about 80 to 85 seniors and persons with disabilities. They have to apply, and they have to be accepted every year with sharing their income so that they qualify. So we will be doing that again in March for the 2020 yard service season. And if you have any questions, otherwise.
Any questions for Cindy? Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yes, thank you, Cindy, for all you're doing with this. One question that came to my mind, and this is from when I was talking with people over the last few months, is how does the city publicize this program? Because I did run into a few people who weren't aware that we have this great home chores program.
We advertise it in the senior newsletter, the 50 Forward. We also have it on our website, and it's under senior resources. We put it periodically. I mean, it's listed in the Troy Today and the Rec Book, and also in our community guide under senior services. And we also have a disability resource guide online that we put it in there as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, let me open the public hearing. We have one person signed up to speak, Katie Scharf.
Hi, good evening. Katie Scharf. I'm with Haven. I represent that organization. We're located at 801 Vanguard in Pontiac. If I may, I have some materials to give the council.
If you could please hand them to the clerk, she'll hand them out to us.
So I wanted to begin by thanking the City of Troy for the support that you've been giving Haven in the past. I understand that you annually fund us with about $2,500 under other funding sources. So I stand here to ask for that continued support, as well as your consideration for CDBG funds, if there are any, no matter how big or small. As you know, Haven is an agency that works with the issues of intimate partner violence and sexual assault. Last year, we actually served 144 clients from the City of Troy. So we really appreciate any support that your city offers us. Our services enable survivors to receive free service and support to heal from the injustice of sexual assault and intimate partner violence. Anyone can become victimized regardless of race, socioeconomic status, gender identity, sexual orientation, culture, education, or religious beliefs. And it's an issue that can take somebody from a very high status to a status of poverty in a matter of hours. Most people know that we provide emergency shelter to those fleeing deadly situations, but we do so much more to help survivors. We have individual and group counseling, legal advocacy, PPO assistance, forensic exams through our START program. Our crisis and support line also offers crisis intervention resources, safety planning, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We're especially proud of the growth of our community resource program, which links survivors back to their communities with assistance for housing, jobs, finances. Recently, we were awarded a federal grant to fund our first ever transitional housing program, which we're very excited about. And this program will provide low-cost transitional housing and supportive services to survivors for up to 24 months, which addresses a critical service gap at Haven. To end the cycle of violence, we must set our survivors up for success, and your support helps us do that. If you're unable to financially support us, we ask that you at least spread the word about one last groundbreaking program that we have. Our prevention education program seeks to engage all individuals and communities to address and prevent sexual assault and intimate partner violence through age-appropriate training at all levels, starting with young children, toddlers, through gender respect and healthy relationships and consent training and bystander intervention. So please, if you have resources to connect us with leaders in your community to help support that program as that grows throughout Oakland County, we feel that education at every stage of life is essential to ending intimate partner violence. That's why our programs span age groups from preschool to college and beyond, and we even provide training on intimate partner violence to professionals in the public and private sectors. So again, I just want to thank you, and if you have any questions about Haven, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Kate. What you do for Haven, what Haven does for our community is nothing short of wonderful. I mean, obviously, it's a horrible, horrible situation, and the staff at Haven sees the worst of things, and I know they handle it with respect and warmth and giving protection where needed, and I think that's a wonderful thing. So the CDBG funds, I believe, are limited in what their use can be for, and maybe Cindy Stewart could come up about that. But I do see Senator McMorrow is still here. I don't know if she's aware of any grants at the state level that may be able to help Haven in any way. Maybe connect with her if possible and see if she knows any resources as well. But I know that we're not at budget time right now, but we can certainly continue to talk about it. And City Manager Miller?
Yes, I'm not specifically aware if the Haven would be eligible. If it would be a community service, and it would compete with home chore. But what we'll do is we will look in to see if it is eligible, and then at that time, if it's eligible, we'll consider possibly funding it somehow, some way. But
yeah, so spouses, battered spouses and children, they fall under special federal guidelines to be considered low to moderate income families. So they actually are eligible, and we don't bill for our community education program. So we bill for counseling, for residential court advocacy, but because the prevention program, or because the education program is prevention, we don't bill for that piece of it.
Right, that exemption is similar to why we can take architectural barriers away in the park. In other words, you can meet low and moderate income eligibility because of a different status.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cindy, did you want to say something?
The police department does budget out of their budget. They budget money and they give that to Haven every year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Any other one? There's nobody else signed up for the public hearing, but is anyone else that would like to speak on E1, the CDBG 2020 funds? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. And any further questions from council? Councilman Pennington?
I was just going to move E1, the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG 2020 funds as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilman Pennington and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton that we approve E1 Community Development Block Grant CDBG 2020 funds as printed. Any further discussion? Councilman Pennington.
I actually do have one quick question for Mark, City Manager Miller. I don't remember this ever being in our budget. Was this ever, did we donate money out of our budget? I don't remember this off.
General fund dollars through the police department, I think $2,500, which was reinstated after the recession.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? Vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion carries. I don't see anybody signed up for F, public comment for items on the agenda. So there's no need for response in G, and there are no postponed items. So we move on to regular business. I1 is board and committee appointments. There are no mayoral or city council appointments this evening. I2 is board and committee nominations. There are no mayoral nominations, but I believe there are some city council nominations.
Thank you, Mayor. For the Liquor Advisory Committee, I would like to nominate Andrew Kaltzunas, Michael Pendy for terms expiring January 31st, 2022, and David Ashland for the term expiring January 31st, 2021.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton and supported by Councilmember Abraham that we appoint, or that we nominate David Ashland for the term to the Liquor Advisory Committee for the term expiring January 31st, 2021. Andrew Kaltzunas and Michael Pendy for the terms expiring January 31st, 2022. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you for those who volunteered.
Next, for the Parks and Recreation Board, I would like to nominate Kelly Martin for the term expiring September 30th, 2020.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton that we nominate Kelly Martin to the Parks and Recreation Board for the term expiring September 30th, 2020, supported by Councilmember Hoderick. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you to those who volunteered.
And then next, for the Southeastern Michigan Council of Governments, I'd like to appoint myself, David Hamilton, for a term expiring November 8th, 2021, for delegate.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton that he appoints himself, David Hamilton, as a delegate to the SEMCOG Board for the term expiring November 8th, 2021, supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt.
I meant to say nominate.
Nominate. I might have said appoint.
Yeah.
All right.
That's okay.
Let the record say it to appoint, or to nominate.
Nominate, yes.
To nominate. Any discussion?
He probably can't vote on that.
Yeah, what is,
You can vote on it.
do I recuse or can I vote on it?
You can vote on it. It is something where, again, you are a representative to a board and it's a council nomination, so you are able to vote on it.
Thank you.
All right. The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Motion carries, and thank you for your continued volunteers in there. So that's it tonight?
That's it. Thank you.
All right, I3, there's no request for closed session. We move on to I4, which is a award standard purchasing resolution 8, Best Value Award, Personnel Evaluation Consulting Services. I believe Bob Bruner, the Assistant City Manager, will introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, the city manager and the city attorney are both appointed by the city council, and each has an employment agreement with the city. Section 5 of each employment agreement states that the base salary will be evaluated annually prior to the anniversary date of the agreement, and Section 9 of each agreement states that the City Council shall conduct a performance review annually. Now, in the case of our City Attorney, the anniversary date of her employment agreement is June 8th. Last performance evaluation was conducted on August 21st, 2017, and last salary increase was adopted by resolution on September 11th, 2017, and that was retroactive to July 1st of 2017. And that was a 2% increase, which was consistent with what other exempt and classified employees received at that time. So since she hasn't been evaluated since then, she hasn't had a increase as of July 21, 2018 or 19, a time when other exempt and classified employees received raises. In the case of City Manager Miller, he's newer to his position, so the anniversary date of his employment agreement is January 1, coming up soon. So we started talking about this issue back in September, and at that time the council adopted a resolution which did four things. It acknowledged that the City Council hadn't completed an evaluation since 2017, recognized that the City Attorney was the only exempt employee that hadn't received an increase, as I described. The City Council also expressed interest in receiving assistance from a performance evaluation consultant, and also committed to a retroactive salary increase for the City Attorney after satisfactory evaluation. So we got to work on a scope of work for a performance evaluation consultant. We included that as a report in the council agenda back in October, and staff issued the RFP in October. We had a bid opening earlier this month and received one response, which was from GovHR USA. And the consultant's name is James Vitrano. And the firm and the consultant may be familiar to some of you on council because it's the same firm and the same consultant that you worked with during the most recent city manager recruiting process. And the cost is for $11,500. Now I realized that since these discussions and activities have been going on since before the election, what was not included in your packet was that scope of work that I mentioned, or the proposed timeline that was included in the scope of work. So I just want to touch on that briefly. It's November, and so we had the city receiving proposals and evaluating them in November according to our proposed timeline. In December, we thought that the city would select a consultant, so we're a little ahead of schedule there. And then for the first quarter of 2020, the consultant was to help the city council prepare for and conduct a kind of shorter and less formal review as kind of a interim measure before we get back on track with a real full-blown annual personnel evaluation program. And then the consultant would work with council and the attorney and the manager in March and May to establish that mutually agreeable evaluation process, and then actually conduct those, in April and May, assist in the preparation of a new employment agreement with the city attorney, because, did I mention her 5-year employment agreement ends this coming June? So hence why time is tantamount here. And then finally, in June and July of 2020, the consultant would help prepare for and conduct that new evaluation process. And then hopefully from there, we'd get kind of back on track in an annual groove, so to speak. And at that time, the council could decide whether or not those services were needed on an annual basis or not. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Bob. Any questions for Bob or anyone in city management? Councilmember Pennington.
I was just surprised that of all the bids we put out there, we only got the one response. Is it mostly because of timing, or?
There's a few things. Purchasing contacted the bidders and asked for feedback as to why they didn't send in a proposal. There were several firms that said they're just too busy. Like GovHR, a lot of the firms that do this kind of work also do manager searches, and there's just a lot of work out there to be done. There's also kind of a limited number of folks who do this kind of work, and they're spread out around the country. So to actually have somebody here local to do it is a good thing. But some of the other people that I had in mind that I thought might propose for this are from out of state and just busy with other things. And some said some of the folks we sent it to said they simply don't do this kind of work. It is really kind of a specialized thing.
Does the estimated total...
Councilmember Brooks.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. Does the proposed estimated total include mileage and personal expenses? Was that the extra $500 that they had put in their proposed numbers?
Right. I think the fee proposal. The project fee is $11,000, and then the expenses are not to exceed $500.
Other questions? Anybody like to? Councilmember Hodering?
I'd like to move I-4, Award Standard Purchasing Resolution 8, Best Value Award, Personnel Evaluation Consulting Services, as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Hoderick and supported by Councilmember Abraham that we approve I-4 Award Standard Purchasing Resolution 8, Best Value Award, Personnel Evaluation Consulting Services, as printed. Any discussion? Councilmember Hoderick.
And whenever we make a decision from this table to hire a consultant, it seems that's when I always get an email questioning, do we need to spend this money to do this? And I want to say right here and right now that one of the number one things I feel accountable for is making sure that we learn from what we've been through and we improve upon how we do the business of this city council. And we need this. We need this, and we need the residents to support us in doing this the right way with a consultant that can walk us through the process so we do right by our employees that are accountable to us, that we do it professionally, ethically, and with someone who understands what we need to be looking at as we do these evaluations. The truth is, when we all come on council with our variety of experiences, we're not all cut out to do this. And that is a dynamic at play that prevents us from being excellent at doing it. And what task do we have at hand that is most important? That we really do this with excellence. Our employees deserve it, and our residents need to have trust that we've been thorough, fair, professional, and comprehended everything that we should. And so, I'll probably still get an email, but this is an expenditure in the scope of our budget, which really is very minimal. But yields so much in terms of us moving forward in a way that I hope can help to continue to improve trust between us and the residents. You, the residents, are our boss. And I guess what I'm saying to my boss is I need to do this to do my job well. And I hope that can be understood. Because I want to do it as a team, and I think it allows us to do a much better job as a team of council members. And I'm excited that we are. City Attorney Bloom, thank you for your patience for us to take a step back and get this right. It's a contribution to us in our roles, and I appreciate you being willing to do that. And Mr. Bruner, thanks for bringing some experience and advice for how we could proceed. I really do appreciate, this is like one of the most important agenda items tonight to me on our council agenda, and I appreciate it.
Councilmember Pennington?
I don't think anyone would question us doing this evaluation after what we've been through. So if they want to send any emails questioning, they can send them to me. I'll answer them. I don't answer too many emails.
Anyone else for any further discussion? No, I just like to say, I'd like to echo what Councilmember Hoderick said and Councilmember Pennington. I think that we definitely do need this, and it's an important step for righting the ship and getting us back on track in this city. We've been through a lot. We've said that probably a couple hundred times over the past few months, but we're getting through it is the point. And I also want to recognize how awkward it is for the two of you to sit here through this conversation when it's about you, but I appreciate that. And Mr. Bruner, thank you for taking the lead on this and providing us with the guidance we need to make a good decision and do what's best for the city. Regarding the gentleman from GovHR, James Petrano, we did work with him during our city manager search, and he's a great guy, and he has local roots. He was a city manager in Rochester, and he has a good vibe and a good understanding. I think he'll be a great asset for us, and hopefully we can glean everything we need, and maybe this is a one-time thing, and or maybe not. We'll see what works out. But on that note, I also want to stress the importance of the annual evaluations are very important, but we also, as a council, need to be fully prepared for the more regular oversight as well, as we've learned. So that covers this covers the annual evaluations, but maybe we can get some tools from them as well about regular oversight. So, any further discussion? Councilman Pennington.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't GovHR the firm that was recommended by the ICMA also? Weren't they one of the firms recommended to us by the ICMA?
ICMA doesn't make recommendations for specific firms, but certainly GovHR is staffed by ICMA members.
Okay. Maybe that's what it was. Thank you.
Yeah. My recollection is, they're very well regarded in the industry, and our interactions with Heidi and James, very professional. They'll be great partners for the city for this. So with that, the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Motion carries. Again, thank you, Mr. Bruner. I-5 is the 2020 City Council meeting schedule. It's also introduced by Mr. Bob Bruner, Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now that you've decided to move ahead with the personnel evaluations, we need to schedule some extra meetings for the council to do its work. We've identified 6 topics for special city council meetings, and I've presented you with a proposed resolution which only covers 3 of those 6 topics, because I didn't want to be too presumptuous about telling you when to meet. But we do I have also included a calendar which shows what's going on Mondays and Tuesdays throughout the year. And for example, in the first quarter, well, let me back up for a second and say what the topics are. First is a city council orientation. And orientation is a little bit of a misnomer, but it is an opportunity for the council and staff to meet together and to start to get on the same page, which is very consistent with the things you've been talking about kind of turning the page, so to speak. And then there is a strategic planning meeting, which is something that's been happening the last several years. That's a very important input into the budget process. So we want to make sure we do that really in early February to give staff enough time to prepare and present a budget in April that represents those strategic priorities. Then we have the personnel evaluations, library funding, a joint meeting with the Planning Commission, which hasn't occurred since February 20th, 2018. And then also there was discussion at the last meeting about meeting to discuss the Council Code of Ethics. So what I've done is I've proposed orientation sessions on Monday, January 6th, which there is no regular meeting that night, so that meeting wouldn't be limited to 90 minutes. So we'd be able to cover more ground there, general government and community development. Then on January 13th, a special meeting before the regular meeting, which would be limited to 90 minutes. And then I've skipped Monday, January 20th, because that's Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. It's not a city holiday. We will be here. If you choose to schedule a meeting that night, we would certainly staff it. And then on January 27th, that's again would be a special meeting before a regular meeting. February 3rd is the proposed strategic planning meeting. That would be on an off night when there isn't a regular meeting, because that meeting needs to be longer. And then on there's nothing proposed for February 10th or February 17th. The 17th is President's Day, and it's also Troy School District midwinter recess. However, once again, city's open. We're here and could staff a meeting if you chose to schedule one that night. So the 6 meetings I've proposed, I proposed on those dates very specifically to get these top priorities addressed. You may find later on going through the evaluation process that we're able to move those personnel evaluation meetings up and do them sooner. That's great, but at least for now we get these on the calendar. And if you want to pull your calendars out now and schedule some additional meetings, then by all means, please do.
Except we're prohibited from getting out our phones if that's where you're so no. Thank you, Mr. Bruner. Any questions about this item? Question?
No, well, I just had a comment more so. I would like to see another joint meeting with the Planning Commission sometime in 2020. I think that would be good.
I completely agree, and I know that I'm kind of hoping, I guess, once we get these scheduled, maybe even at the next meeting, we can schedule some more, because the Planning Commission's been a big one. And as I've said a few times to City Manager Miller, I'm a big fan of the joint meetings with our, even the Troy Chamber or the school district. I think it's great to get those on the calendar. I think they do a lot of good for the community. And there's also some study session issues that I think that we'll be wanting to look at in the new year as well. So our calendars will probably be busy next year. But definitely the Planning Commission, I think, is a high priority for many of us. And based on the feedback in the community from the last election cycle, I think that would be very wise. City Manager Miller?
Mayor, so what I'm hearing is that you would like us to come back at the next meeting with a date for a joint meeting with the Planning Commission? Because our tack was sort of let you get involved and see, where you're at. But I understand your concern and wanting to move quicker on that, and we'll find a date.
Is that consensus fair enough, everybody?
Yes. Yep.
Yes. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
I'm not sure if we really have time, but I would like to have the library funding meeting earlier than June, but maybe we're just so booked. I know the library millage ends in June of 2021, so very soon we need to come up with a plan on how we'll continue to fund the library. I know in the documentation here it's proposed for June, and seeing how full our schedule is, it might be harder, but I would like to see that maybe April or early May if possible. I know we have budget and a lot of other things going on, but any way we can get the library discussion at least started earlier. Maybe we can just do a small discussion during a regular council meeting about the library funding. I'd be willing to do that too. maybe not a really long one, but just something to get the ball rolling. I know that you included a report today that kind of detailed some issues with library funding, so I appreciate that. But that's just my take. I'd like to see that discussion start sooner rather than later.
Councilmember Brooks.
I agree with Hamilton.
I think we're eager to do a lot of things, City Manager Miller, which we may regret soon, but perhaps if you could look at maybe, like I said, the next round of proposed meetings at the next meeting and maybe try to front load some of them as best you can. I mean, we certainly have met, we've had meetings on President's Day and Martin Luther King Day in the past. I don't know if that's preferred, especially when we're meeting every other Monday in this first couple months, but or some alternative option. I mean, City Manager Miller?
City Attorney and I have discussed the library issue, and there will be considerable amount of work that the City Attorney will have to work on. So I don't want to say how much time she will need, but she will need time.
April or May, though, should be sufficient
Okay.
time.
Thank you. Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah, I would agree. We're going to need, that's going to be a lengthy meeting and a lengthy funding process. So I think we should meet on that one after the budget, because the budget meetings are busy, very busy, a couple months there. And then also, Bob, I would like to see as many meetings as possible the same time we meet for City Council. I already have a conflict. I plan my vacations around City Council meetings, and I already see conflict with January 6th. This is, over the weekend was the first time I saw that date, so I would like to see as many meetings as possible. I know. Obviously, joint meetings with Planning Commission or anyone else are not going to be a short meeting, but if we can get a meeting 90 minutes in the back room for a study session, or to get the ball rolling on the library, that's what I would rather see. And other people from council, I would like your input also.
I agree.
Someone want to move the resolution? Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
I'll move I-5 2020 City Council meeting schedule as printed.
Support.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton and supported by Councilmember Pennington that we approve I-5 2020 City Council meeting schedule as printed. Any further discussion? Councilmember Hoderick.
The council, the code of ethics, it's possible that we could handle that during a council meeting as well, or maybe as part of the orientation, the 3 orientation, because to me, that's an orientation topic in and of itself, the ethics and whatnot. Is it possible that that could be melded in to one of those 3 scheduled as an orientation? I don't know if you were looking to put it in there, or if you're feeling like it'll need a whole separate study session time.
We're happy to start it out, and then you guys will direct how much time you actually need. I'm happy to include it as part of the orientation. Obviously, that is it is a high priority, I believe, for council. So happy to try.
City Manager Miller?
And it's okay if it takes multiple meetings regarding ethics, because I have a feeling we need to have input for what you want, and then we'll have to do the research and development of whatever ordinance or whatever we do in the future.
Okay.
I agree.
Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to thank staff for getting this on the agenda so quickly. We've been in remediation mode for about 18 months, and I think the city is really beginning to feel like we're coming out of the darkness. We're actually getting back to brass tacks and getting the work of the city done. I'm actually really enthusiastic to see additional meetings, which I know we're all busy people, but this is time very well spent. And even with seasoned veterans like Councilmember Pennington and Councilmember Hoderick, there's great value to these sessions because there's always something to learn. And then as a council body, we have a new dynamic, and we're all learning together, and we're all, for lack of a better term, bonding together. And I think this will also enable and foster that team development, team mode. We're still not always going to agree, but at least we have a good understanding of each other and a good basis for where our positions are. So I thank staff. This is a really good thing, and I appreciate my first quarter of 2020 being booked up and probably second quarter of 2020 being booked up.
Anybody else?
It's only been 18 months. Seems like much longer.
Thank you, city staff, for putting together this calendar, and not only doing the calendar, but there's a lot of work that goes into extra meetings, and the fact that you'll be putting this stuff together for us, we appreciate it, and definitely think it's in the best interest of the city and for what we need to do our job in the best way we can. So that said, and the vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes. Motion carries. I-6 is a proposed new municipal separate storm sewer system ordinance, and I believe it'll be introduced by City Attorney Lori Greg Blue.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I would just also indicate that there are several signatories to this memo, and there are lots of people who have participated in the drafting of this ordinance. They are here if you have any questions. The technical questions, I'm going to defer to those who are more experienced with the technical part of it. But this is an ordinance that is a mandate from EGLE, which is the Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, and this is concerning our storm sewers, and it basically prevents illicit connections. It's designed to allow for city staff to be enforcing the laws, making sure that we're minimizing the pollution that goes into our storm sewers. So with that, I have others are here in the audience if you have technical questions, but this is one. We are one of the later ones to be adopting this ordinance. It is unfortunately an unfunded mandate, but it will improve the water quality and is a mandate from EGLE.
Thank you. Any questions from council? We were provided with a copy of the proposed changes at our last meeting and had the opportunity to review everything. So someone like to move the resolution? Councilmember Abraham.
I'll move I-6, proposed new municipal separate storm sewer system ordinance as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilmember Abraham and supported by Councilmember Hoderick that we approve I-6, the proposed new municipal separate storm sewer system ordinance as printed. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next on the agenda is I-7, Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, Award to Low Bidder Meeting Specifications and Budget Amendment, Sylvan Glen Pro Shop renovation, and I see Public Works Director Kurt Bovenseep is coming to the podium. Hi, Kurt.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Speaking of getting stuff done, we've got two great big projects proposed tonight for your consideration. The first of being Sylvan Glen Pro Shop. As you may recall, Billy Casper Golf is responsible for the management of the courses, and through that management, they do a very good job of collecting input from the patrons that visit those courses. And one of the comments that they receive quite frequently is the poor condition of the Sylvan Glen Pro Shop restrooms and the retail space in that. If you haven't been there, Sylvan Glen Pro Shop is attached to Camp Ticonderoga, which is also owned by the City of Troy and leased to that company for them to manage. During the 2020 budget discussions, and there's a little bit previous to that, Sylvan Glen Pro Shop was brought up during our facility condition assessment. That was one of our worst, if not the worst, public-facing buildings in the rating and the score system through that FCA report. So in that discussion, in the budget discussion, we proposed an idea of what it would be to renovate the existing Pro Shop versus what it would be to build new. We approached Billy Casper Golf and asked them what their building would look like if they were to build a new one, and their response was a 1,200 square foot building with some retail space. So that's what we proposed during the budget discussions, and that's what council agreed upon, that it was beneficial to go ahead and build a new building. Shortly after that, we began our design phase, and speaking with Billy Casper, was quickly recognized that 1,200 square foot would not meet the needs of what they have. They based that information on what they have out at Sanctuary Lake and some other surrounding golf courses. Sylvan Glen is a little unique where it does offer a lot of storage in the pro shop, currently at 2,700 square feet. So we reevaluated that and took a little bit different approach and decided to go ahead and look at the different things we can do to renovate the existing building. Here are some images up on your screen of the existing building. This is the exterior. The exterior is dated. It has very typical residential vinyl siding, fabric awnings. The interior, here's an image of the restroom to give you an example of what the patrons see in disrepair. The retail space, again, it's trying to accommodate something that you would not expect to see this at a world-class golf course like we have at Sylvan Glen. So through the process, we contracted with the city's current consultant, OHM, to begin that design process of the renovation. In that process, we took into consideration that this is a historic building and it needed to be resolved by the local historic commission. And we also took into consideration Billy Casper's wants and needs to be able to make sure that they're servicing the patrons the best. Here's an image of what OHM has came up with as a conceptual design of what the exterior would look like. Again, the Historic Commission met in September and did approve the conceptual drawings and the materials that are going to be used on the exterior of the building. The layout changes significantly inside. It offers some dedicated storage. It does have some office space for the current management staff. Right now they're in a closet with no windows. It does eliminate the showers in the restrooms. The showers and locker rooms are no longer warranted at the course, so which provided opportunity to open up that retail space and provide a more welcoming environment. This was bid out. 3 bids were received. One thing we did do is, taking the budget into consideration, we did build in some alternates. Alternate one in this case was to replace the siding on the east-facing section of the building, which isn't seen by cars on Rochester Road. It has a lot of electrical equipment, switches, and transformers. So we thought if we did not have to spend the money to replace that, if bids came back too high, we proposed as an alternate so we could value engineer right out of the gate. Alternate one came back reasonable. It was half the cost of the other proposals, so we are recommending to go ahead with alternate one, which is to reside that. We believe it would cost us at least twice as much money if we were to do that down the road as not part of this package. So that total bid amount comes to just over $375,000 with a 10% contingency, and then OHM's design fees bring us just shy of $500,000. There was only $300,000 bid for this. Again, this was based on a 1,200 square foot building that was going to be constructed new, which it didn't take into account the full renovation. Taking that into consideration, if you look at, if we were to build a new 2,700 square foot building, it would be closer to $700,000. So I think we're still getting the best value by renovating opposed to building a new 2,700 square foot building. A little bit on the financial section. This gets a little tricky here because the golf courses, there's what's called an enterprise fund, so they operate solely on themselves it's expected to be self-sufficient. Several years ago, the courses became one enterprise fund between the Sanctuary Lake and Sylvan Glen. Sanctuary Lake, if you remember, has debt from building it. So what happens is Sylvan Glen makes the money and loans it to Sanctuary Lake to help with the debt because their revenue does not cover the operations and the debt. So in these circumstances, the general fund loans the golf course money. So when the debt is paid off, when both courses are making really good sound revenue, they can begin paying the general fund back. So what we're requesting tonight is an additional about a $187,000 amendment to go along with the proposal to complete the project. Project completion, substantial completion would be in March of 2020. This is a fast track, so it's as least disruptive to the golf course operations as possible. The full completion would be June of 2020. However, March, the retail space would be open. Patrons would be able to visit the pro shop. Most of the exterior work would be done in that June era that wouldn't be disruptive to the golf operations. And with that, I'll answer any questions in regards to Sylvan Glen Golf Course.
Questions from Council? Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Bovenseep, for all this information. I remember from the budget discussions that the renovation option was considered $230,000 at the time, though I do think you mentioned that there were other work that would need to be done very soon anyway with that $230,000, and then $300,000 for the 1,200 square foot. So why is it more now from when it was $230,000 back in when we discussed this earlier this year?
Sure. The renovation didn't take into consideration moving, eliminating showers, things like that. It was just to fix the pro shop how it stood that day. So it didn't take into consideration creating a better retail space or eliminating the showers and moving the restrooms, creating additional office space or dedicated office space. So those things were not taken into consideration in that $200,000 price that we gave during the budget session.
Okay, and with this, do you anticipate not many more long-term expenses to this degree equal to what was discussed earlier this year? I know the $230,000, you said there could be a lot more things that need to be done. Do those still exist, or will, because the price tag is higher on this, it's going to cover everything we need to cover?
So OHM is a very thorough architectural company. We actually went into the attic, we took down some drywall to see what was behind there. All the mechanics of the building are being replaced. I'm comfortable to say that we're going to have a 20 to 30 year building after we're done.
All right, I would just like in future budget discussions, I hope we can see all these contingencies. I know it's difficult, there's a lot of topics we cover, but this is a big difference. It seems like we need it, but it was interesting, the difference.
I understand, thank you.
Other questions from council? I have a question. Thank you for the presentation, thank you. And budget amendments, I think, are always a little tough because here we are, we're presented with one thing at one point and then we're coming back. And I think that's some of the difficulty in this. Now I've lost my question. No, my question really is that this is one of many buildings that are on our facilities condition assessment report. And I kind of heard you answer, but when this is completed, assuming it passes, we can kind of cross this one off the list as something that needs to be addressed. I think you just said in the next 20 to 30 years. I won't hold you to it, but I mean, is that?
Absolutely.
That's
yeah, the mechanics of the building, the bones of the building are very good. And we're replacing the HVAC, we're updating the electrical, we're re-insulating, we're replacing windows, we're doing everything that would fail in the next 20 years with new. So this would cross it off the FCA report.
And then this is a financial question. If I'm understanding correctly, the golf courses, the enterprise fund is essentially borrowing these funds from the general fund to pay for this, and then when they've paid off their debt and they are profitable again, they will pay back the general fund? Or is that the hope, or is that finite, or is it determined?
No, that is the case. We have it projected out for the next 9 years. So when the golf courses become solvent, they start, as you indicated, profitable, they can begin paying that debt back to the city.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Pennington?
When we talked about this in budget, I thought this cost seemed similar to what a standalone building was that we had talked about possibly doing. Is that right, or am I remembering that incorrectly?
The standalone building was estimated at $300,000 based on a 1,200 square foot building. That was what was originally proposed and brought to you during the 2020 fiscal year budget discussions. What has changed is the size of the building. Billy Casper recognized that the building, 1,200 square feet, would not meet their needs, and it needs to be bigger. And again, a 2,700 square foot building would come closer to $700,000 to build brand new.
I'm just confused on how when we talked to them, you know, we had one idea and then they said, then it totally changed. I didn't, you know, we were not any part of that process, so I'm just a little disappointed because a standalone building, you know, with everything brand new would be the way I'd want to go. To put this kind of money into a renovation, I mean, you're probably going to replace the roof too, aren't they going to replace the roof?
No, the asphalt shingles will not be replaced. It's not warranted at this time.
Okay. I don't know. It just doesn't, you know, it doesn't make sense to me to put this kind of money into a renovation when we were talking, when I thought what we were going to get was a standalone building, which is everything brand new and, you know, then you're good for 20 years. I don't know. It just, when I read this over the weekend, I was just disappointed, really.
Other questions from council?
Maybe.
Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you. Sorry. So is there, thank you for the presentation. Is there a definite plan as far as paying the money back? I mean, you said 9-year time frame. In 9 years they would start paying it back, or 9 years we would anticipate it would be paid in full?
No, 9 years is when the debt would be paid off for Sanctuary Lake. So Sanctuary Lake would no longer need to borrow funds from Sylvan Glen Golf Course, and Sanctuary Lake would be able to cover their operating costs plus pay back any money borrowed for that debt, including the money they're borrowing from Sylvan Glen Golf Course. So after 9 years, and it would take some time to pay that debt back, they would not be able to do it in 1 year's time.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
Yeah. What comes to mind for me is, and I realize this is a situation we've inherited, that we have these golf courses, we have an obligation to maintain them if we're going to operate them. I'm concerned about our return on investment. We're putting a lot of money into golf courses. Everything I've read over the last couple of years, and correct me if I'm wrong, is golf's on the decline. Sorry, Ed. It's just not something that younger people are engaging in as a pastime. So I'm concerned that we're going to put this money into this building, and perhaps we have no choice. This is perhaps something we need to do. Do we have any projections on whether we're going to see this enterprise continue to be profitable? Is this something we should be continuing to invest in as a council or as a city?
I think I know that when someone visits a course, if they visit and they don't like the looks, the feels of the course, they're not going to go back to it. So not investing could be detrimental to the profit in itself. I will say that regardless whether we invest this money in a renovation, for the patrons, we still have an obligation to maintain that building to a certain standard and making sure it's at a minimum operable. That minimum is what we presented to City Council during the budget discussion based on the facility condition assessment, which was around $230,000. So if this does not pass tonight, I will likely be back requesting funds to make that building functionable at a tune of about $230,000 without any of the additional renovations that we're proposing tonight. I'm not sure. I'm not a golfer. I'm not sure what I know statistically, we've been in meetings with Billy Casper. Statistically, golf is declining. However, I know that our courses here in Troy are some of Billy Casper's best performing courses in the country.
That's good to hear.
Councilmember Pennington.
So as a golfer, I can help answer that question. What the pictures don't show in the renderings that you just saw is that the smell of the clubhouse. It's somewhere between musty and an old sweat sock when you walk in there. So it's not a good place. When I go in, I would just pay and get out. I don't hang out and look at the merchandise. What Mark said, or what Kurt says is true. It's got to be redone because as a golfer, I have a choice of going to, and right, they say that, you know, golfing is in decline, but they also say that a recession is coming, and I've heard that for 3 or 4 years. So golfing is in a slow decline, and I, as a golfer, I have a choice of going to wherever I want and golf are nicer courses, and Sylvan Glen and Sanctuary Lake are both nice courses. But that being said, you're gonna turn people away on not having somewhere to, when you walk in the building, it's offensive. So like Kurt said, it's something that has to be done regardless, and I support it. I was just disappointed to see that it wasn't a, standalone building that you walk in and something's brand new.
Councilmember Erickson Galt.
So I know that from what I'm hearing from you, our golf courses are doing well. Does Billy Casper, does the Enterprise, do they estimate that we're going to do better? That with an improved pro shop that we can anticipate increased revenues, so people are going to stick around and they don't have to smell the old sock, whatever it was you called it.
Billy Casper has an extraordinary marketing campaign. I'm sure they're going to market this as much like you would visit a restaurant that hangs under new management. Come visit the new pro shop, and I'm sure that will attract people that may have stopped going to Sylvan Glen because of the pro shop back to it to see the new and improved space.
Kurt, I guess, so my question now is, Billy Casper, did they provide some kind of justification to you as to why they needed to increase the size and do this major change? And I only ask because here, the Troy Historic Village is sitting here, and they've gone about 10 years on a project that we've told them to go back and say, no, you can't spend that much money, and it's been a back and forth, and they had to make some changes. Does Billy Casper, or can you share what the real need was? I mean, obviously, sure, everyone wants bigger and better, and no question Billy Casper does a fantastic job managing our golf courses, and we've said it when we've approved their contracts, and no slight to them in any way. But for a comfort level up here, to go from what we thought was going to be a 1,200 square foot standalone that they had kind of signed off on, I thought would be what they needed, to come back now, more than doubling it. What was their big push for that, and what would help make us feel better and the community potentially feel better when there's, this is real money, that there's a lot of facilities in our city that could use the help?
Sure. I'll start, and Derek with Billy Casper is here tonight, and if he wants to jump in, but it came down to storage. A large portion of this was storage, and I think I'm speaking accurately, and I'll let Derek maybe answer that question directly.
Thank you, Derek. I didn't recognize you with
the
beard back.
How you doing?
Sorry, Derek.
I'm Derek Markham. This is my 7th year at Sylvan Glen. I'm the one that works in the closet and that's shoved in the back. But the main reason was cart storage as well too, because and where were you going to put this standalone building was going to be out in the parking lot, away from our carts. It would actually put us backwards in our operation. We have a fleet of 72 golf carts, and we can only charge 32 at a time, and we're one of the busiest courses in the state right now. And if you put us a couple hundred yards away from our cart storage, it's just not functional. So we decided to stay kind of where we were on top of our cart storage. So that was kind of the main reason why we decided to stay at the same footprints of where we are now.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Now that we've had this discussion with Sanctuary Lake brought into it, the question will be, well, why did we have a second course built? I'm anticipating emails. And that's a fair question, and I have enough history and knowledge to be able to kind of sort of answer it, but it might be worth a discussion now. Sanctuary Lake was built on land that the city had that had been landfill, correct? Mm-hmm. And it was the best viable use, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm testing myself, for that land. And we had a recreational need, and that's how we ended out. In case you're wondering and you're new to the discussion about golf in Troy, we have 2 courses because that piece of land, that was a very viable, at least at the time, this predates all of us, viable use of the land. Am I right? And should you flesh that out further?
No, that's absolutely correct. And it was, in addition to that, it was in response to our constituents asking for another course. We had to take a loan out to build that course. That was a big ask from our constituents and council. So, but it was to meet a demand that was not being fulfilled at the time. 15 years ago, there was a much higher demand for golf than I would say today.
Isn't it also true that a golf course was a better, it saved us money somehow? There was some, rather than just maintaining the landfill or capping the landfill and not doing anything there, we're actually better off because of the golf course. And now we're getting way far past all this conversation, but not that I just confused the issue, but that was my understanding as well. At least that's what I've been told in the past. So we're, okay. Any other questions? Councilman Pennington?
Just again to answer part of the question, return on investment is probably going to be low, but you have to consider it as a service to the fellow citizens in Troy. I play both courses. I play Sanctuary more, but and it's not because of the pro shop, but what you want is a state-of-the-art facility with good amenities. That way, if this decline does come that you're mentioning, people don't go to other courses. Quite a few courses have closed in our area, and so we have benefited from that. And we're pretty much booked up. There's a lot of rounds played on both courses. So I wouldn't say our courses are in decline, but if you don't keep services top notch, then you risk that happening.
Any other questions? Anyone like to move this resolution?
I'll move it, Mayor.
All right, Councilman Pennington.
I-7 standard purchasing resolution, award to low bidder meeting specifications and budget amendment, Sylvan Glen Pro Shop renovation as printed.
Support.
Is that you? Okay. Moved by Councilmember Pennington and supported by Councilmember Erickson Galt that we approve I-7 Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, award to low bidder meeting specifications and budget amendment, Sylvan Glen Pro Shop renovation as printed. Any further discussion? I thank you both for answering questions, and we're new council, asking lots of good questions, so thank you. The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Kurt. I-8, I see you're still up here. Mr. Bovensieff, the Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, award to low bidder meeting specification, Niles Barnard House renovation. I hand it over to you, Mr. Bovensieff.
Thank you. Again, another very exciting project, and just to go over some of the history of this project began in 2017 when council appropriated a $450,000 budget for the renovation and to meet our obligation for the Niles Barnard renovation. First bids were received in September 2018 and came in well over budget at $1.2 million. During the budget discussion, we had a lot of discussion about the Niles Barnard and what can we do to bring those costs down. I know the Troy Historic Society also spoke at council during those budget times, and we agreed that $700,000 could meet the needs of both the city, meeting its obligation, and meet the needs of the Troy Historic Village. So we began that redesign in February of this year, and then ultimately bidding out and receiving bids in this past November. Some of the things that we did in the redesign that OHM consultants also participated in was remove any of the alterations and improvements to the second story. During the first design, there was an intention to use the second story for light office, and it would take significant improvements to that residential structure to be able to meet the load bearings to perform light office. There was also an understanding that one of the major expenses in that $1.2 million was the restoration of the windows. So what we did is we put an alternate into there instead of repairing and refinishing the existing windows to replace the windows with a historic-like wood window. Another main topic during the budget discussion was the openness of the room. The intent of the room was to provide a meeting space, and there was some bearing walls that need to be opened up. The $700,000 was to include, and the design was to include opening up that archway to be more open, have a more open environment. Additionally, we said that instead of making the addition a alternate proposal, to actually include it as part of the construction, instead of trying to renovate the Niles Barnard into ADA restrooms, to use that addition space to accommodate the ADA accessible restrooms. We also were in this design providing the warming kitchen with appliances. And finally, we noticed during this design phase that some of the foundation work that was originally proposed when the house was moved wasn't completed 100%. So this design included completing that foundation work to its original intent. Again, this was approved by the Troy Historic Commission in September. In that discussion, we did bring up the alternate of replacing the windows instead of resurfacing them or repairing them, and the Troy Historic Commission agreed to that alternate. I know this footprint is hard to see. It is in your agenda packet. So you can see that we designed a product that can be set up in the future for additional alterations to the Niles Barnard. We redesigned the steps going downstairs to be able to accommodate one day future steps going to the upstairs. So that was taken into consideration as well when we went through the design. We have some elevations here where you can see the current structure and how the addition will look. The addition will also provide the ADA accessibility into the building, which is important since it is a public space. When we bid this out, we did receive 3 bids. Cedrone Associates Incorporated of Utica, Michigan was low bid. Their base bid was $475,000. As I talked about, we did build some alternates in there to make sure that we were being fiduciary responsible. That alternate one, to replace the windows instead of refurbishing them, is a deduction off that base bid for $25,000. Alternate 2 is, instead of using traditional copper plumbing, to use PEX and brass fittings. So PEX is a plastic type plumbing, and that's a deduction of $3,000. Alternate 3 of $5,000, that's instead of using a cultured stone product around the foundation, to use the existing field stone that's on site, so a split face granite along the foundation. And then finally, alternate 4, an additional $2,500, is to remove the existing crown and base moldings in the historic structure and repair those, and then replace them with what is salvaged when they remove them. So that was also important. So that brings us our total new base bid amount to $454,000. We have a 15% contingency in Sylvan Glen. We built in a 10% contingency with a historic structure. We like to build in a little bit more contingency because of the unknowns. And then we have OHM's design fees, and that also includes the construction management. OHM will be managing this project and the contractor. So just to revisit the financial section on this, the current budget was appropriated by $700,000. The remaining funds will be used for the civil work. All the civil work on the exterior of the building, the sidewalks, and all the landscaping will be done with in-house staff, so the remaining balance will be used to cover those costs. We are anticipated that this project will be complete by June 30th, 2020. With that, I'll answer any questions.
Thank you, Kurt. Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Just thank you for this. This is something we've needed to do for a long time, and everything I see here looks great. It looks like it came in a little less than we thought, so we'll be able to do more, and that is very exciting. So I'm glad we finally will get this taken care of. It's a great asset for our community.
My only question, and you've answered it, but we have the support of the village, and we're in a good place. And I see nodding heads out there, so that's very good. So, Councilmember Hoderick?
The windows being, the windows are okay?
I can comment. So the windows the preferred, when I went to the Troy Historical Society and said that the Cedrone is offering a $25,000 deduction in windows, I worked with the Troy Historic Village to see if there was any other way we could keep the original windows and refurbish them. We went to Cedrone, the proposed contractor, and said, would you be willing to remove the windows? And the Troy Historical Society was going to work with a nonprofit, Eastern Michigan University, to refurbish the windows, and then Cedrone would be responsible for reinstalling the windows. At first, they were okay with the idea, and then they realized that they would be taking the liability when the windows were removed, and then they declined that offer. So we did look at, I believe we looked at, exhausted all options to be able to keep the windows. The windows will be salvaged, they will be taken out gently, and they will still become the city's windows. We will keep them, and the village has plans to maybe refurbish those one day. And if they're able to do it over a length of time, maybe one day we remove those new windows and replace them with the refurbished original windows.
Any other questions from Council? Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you. For those that are just tuning in and not following previous conversations about this project, one thing that we need to acknowledge is that when the Niles Barnhart House moved to the Troy Historic Village, probably about close to 10 years ago now, 2010, part of the agreement with the city was that we were obligated to maintain the historic building to a level of repair. So for those that are looking at this project and looking at the cost, and it is quite a big number, and saying, why are we even doing this? Well, we are obligated, we are contractually obligated to have this house be in good repair. It was part of the agreement when we accepted this historic village and frankly, the birthplace of Troy. So we would have to do quite a bit of this renovation and incur these costs regardless. We are spending a little bit more so that we can make this space something that could be used for an event, make it a revenue generator, and have it pay for itself. So again, similar to the Billy Casper Golf, maybe the ROI is not quite as quick as we'd like it to be, but there is an ROI, and it is a benefit to the city, and we are being good stewards, one of our contractual obligation, but also to an asset, really a jewel of the city. And I look forward to that building being open to the public, because right now to get in it for a tour, I think you need special access and get arrangements to do that, because it is not frankly safe in some areas. So I will be supportive of this.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes, I agree with Councilor Abraham 100%. This is something we have to do. We've been talking about it for quite a while now. It's amazing to me that this is one building and it's a partial restoration and it's almost $700,000. But then, I fix cars. So, I mean, people say, why is it $15,000 to paint my car? Well, it's, there's a lot that goes into it that you don't know. So, I agree with it. This is something we've been talking about for many years. We have to get this done. The only question I would have was, when I was reading through this, so it was moved 9 years ago. What was the problem with the foundation? What did they have to redo? What did somebody not do correctly, or what's the story there?
Sure. There's some ties that need to be tied and reinforced back to the foundation. So the architect that originally designed the foundation when the house was moved was invited here the second round to look at it to make sure everything was sound in the way he had originally designed, and he recognized that some things were not done. So we thought that it was important to include it in this project, so it was exactly how it was originally designed when the house was moved, to meet all the load capacities, because the house, when he did design the foundation and how it tied to the foundation, at that time it met all the load requirements to be able to have occupants that the Historic Villages wants to have in there. So to meet those load ratings, we thought it was important to go back to that original design and complete it in its entirety.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Hoderick.
So we're sure about opening it. That was part of that past discussion too, to be able to do meeting space essentially, or possibly, you know, if you have a small wedding at the chapel, you could have a small reception in the house, kind of an idea. And we were worried about if we'd be able to do that. You're feeling confident that, well, unless you get into the walls and see something more, but that was such a dream to be able to do that, and it sounds like you figured it out.
Yes, to open the doorway, to make it one large meeting room is part of the design and is what Cedrone bid on and was designed to open that up. So yes, that will happen.
That's really good news. Thank you for the work that you've done, all of you, to get us to this place. And I will move the resolution as, let's see, I-8, Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, award to low bidder meeting specification, Niles Barnard House renovation, as printed.
Support. Moved by Councilmember Hoderick and supported by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton that we approve I-8, the Standard Purchasing Resolution 2, award to low bidder meeting specification, Niles Barnard House renovation, as printed. Any further discussion? Again, thank you for all that you've worked so hard on this. I look forward to attending an event in the summer, maybe even cutting a ribbon. All right. The vote, Ms. Dixon?
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes. Motion carries. Next up is the consent agenda. It's my understanding that J5 has been withdrawn.
Yes.
Okay, would anyone like to pull anything else from the consent agenda? Would anyone like to move the consent agenda? Councilman Pennington.
Mayor, I will move all items on the consent agenda, removing J5.
Support. Moved by Councilmember Pennington, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton, that we approve all items on the consent agenda as printed except for J5, which has been removed or withdrawn. Any discussion? The vote, Ms. Dixon.
Councilmember Brooks?
Yes.
Councilmember Erickson Galt?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton?
Yes.
Councilmember Hoderick?
Yes.
Councilmember Pennington?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilmember Abraham?
Yes.
Motion carries. If you are here on a consent agenda item, they have all been approved except for J5, which has been withdrawn. Next up is memorandums and future council agenda items. There are none this evening. So that takes us to public comment for items not on the agenda. See one person signed up, Marv Reinhardt. Please be aware of the rules in the agenda packet. You have 3 minutes.
I got a Google thing now. I talk 365, 147. Okay. I'd just like to remind you that there's still a fight going on in this city. There's a group of people going to foreign lands, putting articles in newspapers that are lies. This says here that the book party was the Republicans who did it in Europe. So if they want to bring internet, I consider this an international city. That 16 miles should be taxed somehow. 1%, whatever it is, this city wouldn't have any problems. Those basements are flooded over there. They have a lot of dangerous, unfinished business over there, which I mentioned to the police. Okay. And I can mention names up here. Okay. That packet I give you is a paragraph of about 500 names I got problems with in this city. Okay? Because I did it this way because when JD got her mail, they opened it. Now, I've been in lots of businesses, secretaries open up checks. Personal letters go to the person. And this city council loved the idea that her letters were being opened up. So you guys can just go around. You got, like I said, you got to go back in history. I've been in this city before the city. Didn't know, but I was it. It used to be live fish in Emerald Lakes, dead. So now it's a dead lake, Troy, Michigan. Okay. All these streams had fish in them. I had a friend that had a trapping line that caught animals, dead. Okay. So all I'm trying to do is clean up the environment. If somebody gets in the way, I can't help it. But I do talk to the Attorney General. I do talk to all these people. So you can talk to me anywhere you want. We're willing to sit down to anybody. Anybody who's willing to listen. I do have plans that could, and I'm cheap. I don't like spending money. So there's no budget items to cost money, okay? But I think the DDA is not the city of Troy. It's in the city of Troy, and I like to see the contract. And two, every school building and every city building in this city is rented out on Sundays. That rental schedule should be public. It shouldn't be secret that some organization can rent a building in Troy and nobody knows about it. Because is that tax included in their audit, or is that unaudited money they can spend any way they want? And that's the city, and that's the school system. So you have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Reinhardt. That concludes those who have signed up to speak for public comment on items not on the agenda. Now's an opportunity for City Council or City Administration to offer a response or reply. Seeing none, we'll move on to N, council referrals. There are none this evening, which takes us to council comments. Anybody have any council comments this evening? Councilmember Pennington.
Yeah, I just got a quick one, Mayor. It's come to my attention, well, after reading the media and having a couple of emails and phone calls and customers coming by the shop, asking about the possible merger of Troy schools with Clawson. We have, some of the public don't know, in City Council, we have no control of what the Troy School District does. This is similar to what happened 2 years ago when they sold those 4 huge parcels of land, and we had many calls and people asking us questions. Any calls are directed to the school district. We have no control over what they do, and it's a separate entity.
Councilmember Abraham.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of exciting bits of information from our Troy Library. So the library, as usual, is innovating, and one of its wonderful innovations is a new book subscription service that they will have for both adults and youth. So you can sign up to receive a mailer box every other month containing a surprise library book and some themed goodies. So I'm looking forward to finding out what that could be. And they'll keep if you sign up for it, they'll keep your box on hold shelf for a week. And if you get a book that you've read before, just stop by the reference desk in the adult or youth section, and they'll make sure you go home with something else to read. So again, this is something that's available both for our youth and for our adult programs. You can sign up at troypl.org/box. And if you sign up by January 8th, you'll be included in that first month's service, and the first boxes will go out January 15th. So I know I have already signed up for myself. The other exciting thing going on with the library is that there is a community cookbook that is going to be developed. So they're looking for submissions of all kinds, from traditional family recipes to culturally diverse dining to kid-friendly to allergy-friendly snacks and trends. So if you have something that you love, please share it. And if your recipe comes with a story, they'd love to hear it. So if you want to do that, you can go to, again, troypl.org, click on the link, and you can submit your recipe and story there.
I would just
Councilmember Brooks.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Forgetting that. Sorry, I'm still learning. I would like to first say congratulations again to Kathy Russ. That was just such an amazing award and such an honor to our city. And just also another plug kind of for Drew and Stephanie, such a wonderful job putting on the Citizens Academy. It was amazing. Anybody who wants to know anything about how your tax dollars are working and how local government is working for you, I would highly, highly recommend participating in the Citizens Academy. And just have a wonderful and safe holiday weekend. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Last meeting, I meant to take a moment to just thank the city clerk and her team for the great work with the election. And, we made an investment to try to help make sure we processed absentee ballots fast and efficient. And that night as the polls closed, I thought, oh, please let those machines do what we hoped they would do, and they clearly did. So I just think we, we need to take a moment and voting day can come and go, and you don't often appreciate all the behind-the-scenes work that goes on, the training of the people, and just thank you, Aileen. It was seamless, and it was so well done that you almost forgot it had happened, and I think we need to acknowledge it and make sure we thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember, and thank you to council and to the city administration for all their support. And just so you know, this is the job I've always wanted, so I'm very happy to do it.
Anyone else? Well, I didn't forget about Election Day, Ellen, so. but yes, thank you, Aileen. And everybody who works at the polls, I think it's Suzanne's here. She worked in Precinct 23, I think. It's a long day if you're working. I mean, many of them are there before sun up, and they're there long after sun goes down. So thank you to all of you who make that such a good part of our democracy. On a more serious note, City Attorney Bloom had sent an email to us that was not privileged, but regarding the City Council investigation and ethics probe that we approved in a previous council, with the understanding that it's time to sign the engagement letter with Plant Moran. I just want to confirm with you, City Attorney Bloom, if you were seeking input from council as to whether or not there needed to be changes, or if anybody not responding meant go ahead and sign as is, or what you need from us at this point.
Input would be great. This is something that, again, I wanted to make sure that I was on the right page, and you know, before I actually commit the city, you know, to signing this. So I would appreciate the input. I'm happy to send it again if you would like me to. I know that I sent it out, and there were a lot of people who are just starting. So, so I'm happy to do that if that will be helpful, or if you wanted to provide feedback now, I'm happy to accept that as well. I did get from Councilman Pennington, I did get a comment that he wanted to see a not to exceed number in there, and we don't have that currently in the proposal. And that's the feedback that I've received so far.
Councilman Pennington, did you go ahead?
Yes. So my concern after reading that was that we didn't have a not to exceed number. I know that was something that I talked about quite a few times. And I would like to see an amount, and I don't know what the amount would be, but I wouldn't want it is to be like an ongoing thing to where we're spending tens of thousands of dollars on top of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've spent. Now, I thought we talked about $30,000 as being a possible. That's what I would like to see, and input from everyone else is great.
City Attorney Bloom, their estimate for what they initially provided was $30,000. Is that
I
correct?
believe that's correct. Yes, I didn't look at it before coming today, but yes, I do believe that's correct.
Right. And the process, if we wanted to include a not to exceed at this point, obviously recognizing that if something needed to be amended in the future, it could be done. What would be the process for that? You need a resolution from us, or would you need a consensus, or what would be the procedure?
Since there is another meeting next week, if you'd like me to bring it as an action item, I'm happy to do that for the council members so that you could pass a resolution. That's an option that you have.
Thoughts on Councilman Pennington?
I just wanted something in there. I just don't want to have an open check for, just as an example, not the Plant Moran, but the second investigation. The Plant Moran, I'm sorry. Just they wanted many details, and as we're sitting in one of the meetings, one of the things they brought up was that there was an overtip of $5. And I understand, you want to get the details, you want to get them right, but just to get into that much detail, would you get to a point where you stop. You're spending good money after bad. So that's why that was my point of having a not to exceed amount in there.
I'm comfortable with the idea of a not to exceed at that amount based on what they had provided in their initial estimates. That engagement letter is very thorough, and I can understand the idea that it could conceptually get much bigger than what the resolution that was passed by council was. So I'd be comfortable giving consensus for a not to exceed at $30,000 with the understanding, the scope of work is defined in there, and with all hopes and understanding that, that was the higher end of what potentially it could be for this kind of process. So is there consensus to have a resolution brought back for a not to exceed? Yes. I see several nodding heads, so we'll be back in a week. So, any other council comments? Okay, we move on to reports. Comments on the reports this evening. There are several. Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I mentioned this earlier, but P2C is about library funding options, and as we come to having to renew the millage or discuss future funding of the library after June of 2021, there's a few options laid out here, whether we create an independent library board of elected members, whether we appoint a library board, whether we continue what we're doing and discuss different millage options. I recommend residents read this, and we're going to begin this discussion as the year goes on with the goal of getting something on the ballot in November of next year to figure out what the next steps are. I know, Mayor Baker, you've been a passionate advocate for a 7-day library, and I think now's the time, if we want to make that happen, that we can make that happen. So I welcome residents to read this and start the discussion on the next steps for our library, especially with Kathy being named Librarian of the Year. I think it's a great time to start this conversation.
No pressure, Kathy. Other comments on reports? Councilmember Hoderick.
Related to that, I've been around a while now. I'm starting to be the old lady of the group. And the library discussion, and I asked this question with the agenda today sent into staff about, back during the Great Recession and when we were talking about library funding, one of the areas that gets twisted and complicated to understand is that discussion has to include an understanding that we are challenged as fiduciaries to protect our AAA bond rating. And so it's not as an easy discussion as everyone might think. And I had an answer, we went actually through a study session, I believe it was back in 2013, with a gentleman who had knowledge of what the ratings agencies look at. And we are very, very, very blessed to have a AAA bond rating. There are cities that would give, a lot to be able to have that, and it is hard-earned. And it's something we just really need to protect. And in that study session, because we have a millage cap, we asked, is that a consideration funding how we fund our library to our bond rating? And he at that time said yes. So fast forward to now, I'm wondering if it's still a factor. And the Assistant City Manager, Mr. Bruner, responded back, yes, the city's bond rating should be a consideration in all financial decisions because the rating affects the cost of borrowing. Now, ideally, hopefully we would never need to do any borrowing, but we may in the future. The better the bond rating, the less interest the city will pay when it borrows money or refinances debt in the future. Funding operations with savings, our fund balance, is not sustainable and should be carefully considered and done in very limited circumstances. So I just bring this up now with this wonderful memo in the report, mindful that as city council members, this is, one of the weights on our shoulders as we have this discussion. Because of our operating millage cap, the idea that we can take fund balance and fund an operation that has to happen year after year could affect that AAA bond rating. There were arguments back during the Great Recession as to whether that had credence. We've had a study session since then that confirmed that it does, and it's something I think we're going to need to be mindful unless staff comes back to me at some point and says, no, Ellen, that doesn't need to be a factor, but it always comes back that, yes, we need to consider that. And I just hope the residents will, you can gloss over. I can remember talking to a couple volunteer firefighters about this one night. Councilwoman Abraham was with me, and we started to explain it, and they said, you know what, we'll take care of these rigs and fighting fires and high-rises, which they had just been explaining to us, and you take care of that. Well, that's fine. We're happy to take care of it, but we need our residents to help understand, because our library is just an amazing gem, and proud of it and want to protect it in a fiscally responsible way as we go forward.
There are comments on reports? Again, I want to thank City Manager Miller for his very thorough City Manager status report. I think these reports are great and do a lot to give us the information we need and the tools we need to be better representatives in the community. So thank you for the work on that. And obviously, it's not just you alone. Your staff, the staff in the City Manager's office and the department heads is very huge and wonderful. I'll echo some of the comments about the library funding. It's obviously going to be something we need to discuss thoroughly and with great care and consideration as to the best way forward for our city. So I look forward to working through that in the next year. And this report was a good starting point to remind us of these issues. And what better night to have the report when Kathy receives the Librarian of the Year. So I mean, it's meant to be. I just briefly wanted to talk about P2A, which is the city strategy report. This year we had a strategy talking about looking into the feasibility of a Rochester Road Improvement District. This is a solid report, again, giving lots of different options on what could be done. And city management is recommending no action at this time. And I just wanted to talk briefly about where this came from at one of our strategic planning sessions, or we used to call them retreats, but we didn't go anywhere other than in a room together. But this was brought up as something, the billboards had sprung up on Rochester Road, the storage facility had come up, and there's a lot of small businesses and residents also who were concerned about how Rochester Road was evolving or is evolving. And the idea was perhaps, is there something the city could do more formally to help make sure Rochester Road stays not going down the wrong path of what it could look like, but keeping it, better designed and moving in the right direction. The report explains some different options regarding taxing. I don't think that's what we're looking at. I do think there is maybe some kind of partnership or something that the Troy Chamber could look into with their businesses that are members. I definitely want to talk to them. And anywhere we can, anything we can do to add trees, even certain things. So I know that we'll continue to look at these things, and it's important to those who are frequently on Rochester Road, those who live near there, that they don't feel like we're ignoring that part of the city as a major thoroughfare. So thank you again for that report. Anything else on reports? There's no closed session requested this evening, so we're on to adjournment. I say have a wonderful Thanksgiving to all of you and to all of you out in Troy, and we're adjourned.